You are told that if you're not skinny, you're not gonna make it. Like, I was never competitive growing up. I just did it because all my friends were dancing, so I just wanted to be there. Girls are just so competitive. They are ruthless. So I'm glad that I don't do that anymore.
I'm only gonna say it one more time, and then you're gonna lose the privilege to eat dinner.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room. Abby, we took the phone away from Abby in November. And you may never get the phone back.
Probably not.
If you cut one more thing in my house, I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm gonna cut its head off.
Grandma will be so mad. Sometimes she's off in the group dances. You had some timing issues. Sometimes a little too loud.
We take opportunities from people who have been here longer.
We're lucky to even be a guest here at the ALDC.
Obviously, you're crazy in public.
I can sleep with a smile on my face.
This young lady's amassed more than 10 million followers on YouTube.
Piper Raquel is an incredibly popular child influencer.
Piper's mother, Tiffany Smith, is the momager.
It seemed so innocent, but it wasn't innocent at all. She took these kids to massive viral fame.
She takes advantage of them.
I don't come today as the daughter of a felon, nor as a victim of an abnormally abusive mother. I come today as a victim of family vlogging.
Leo, as you know, is the latest, hottest, hunkiest teen idol there is.
Yeah, muscles.
Look, speaking of hunky, huh?
Could we ever ban child entertainment work? You're probably thinking no, given how deeply ingrained child performers are in Hollywood, but with growing pressures for stronger protection for children and the advancement in AI technology, could the end of children working in entertainment actually be coming? There have been so many accounts from child stars lately who are now adults speaking out in recent years, like Jeanette McCurdy, the girls from Dance Moms, and in documentaries like the Nickelodeon kids on Quiet on Set, or Demi Lovato's Child Star, where they have child stars ranging from JoJo Siwa all the way up to Drew Barrymore, like that entire period of time, as well as social media stories from kids coming forward, like Ruby Frankie in the 8 Passengers channel, that mom that was like super vicious and abusive and brainwashed, or even the kids from Piper Raquel's squad in the upcoming Netflix documentary Bad Influence, The Dark Side of Kidfluencing. No matter which direction you look, there are children being exploited and treated horribly in every form of children's entertainment. I've actually worked on the Disney Channel myself, and I've been posting on social media for years, and I can tell you one thing, there's a huge change coming. With the growing conversation around child exploitation in entertainment, could we ever actually ban kids from working in the industry, or would that be impossible? Before we get too far deep into this video, I did want to let you guys know that I have reopened up Patreon. So starting immediately, I am going to be posting my videos onto Patreon. We're going to have longer extended or unedited cuts of Dance Moms episode reactions and stuff like that over on the Patreon. I'm thinking of doing Dance Coach Reacts videos, but exclusively over on the Patreon. And then for all of my other videos, you're going to get early access over there on the Patreon as well. So I will leave that down below if you're interested in checking out the Patreon or signing up. And thank you guys so much for all of you guys that do consider supporting this channel. It means the absolute most to me, and let's get back into the video. For as long as there's been entertainment, there have been child stars, and for just as long, there's been exploitation. Jackie Coogan was one of Hollywood's first child stars, and if you've never heard of him, he made millions, but when he turned 21, he found out his parents had spent almost all of his fortune. That scandal led to the Coogan Law in 1939, which finally protected some of child stars' earnings, and you've probably heard of this law. If you've ever heard of a Coogan account, it's because of this law. Basically, it means that a portion of the kid's earnings have to be kept in a special bank account so that there is actually money when the kid turns an adult and can legally spend their money, that there's actually something there and the parents didn't squander it all away. But laws in the US didn't go far enough to protect kids, that's for sure. Shirley Temple, who we all know, she was the biggest box office draw of the 1930s, and she was forced to keep up grueling work schedules. And Judy Garland, well, I've made an entire 2-hour documentary about her on my channel, but studio executives controlled her diet, her sleep, and even gave her stimulants to keep her working. And this this left her as an addict for the rest of her life. Across the Atlantic, some stories were ahead of the curve, like France and Germany required special permits for child performers under 16, making entertainment work a privilege, not a right. Norway and Sweden took an even stricter approach, putting child entertainment under the same heavy labor restrictions as any other industry. Meanwhile, the US and Canada set up labor laws, but they left giant loopholes. Reality TV and social media, almost completely unregulated still in 2025. As the entertainment industry has evolved, so have the controversies surrounding child performers. While some might associate child stars with glitzy red carpets and fame, behind the scenes there have been troubling stories of abuse and exploitation from every single industry where kid performers exist. A key example is the Nickelodeon scandal, which was brought to light in the Quiet on Set documentary. I covered this documentary in length, as well as made a bunch of spin-offs about how the same treatment happened to other child stars, so you can see those on my channel. If you're looking for more long-form documentaries and investigations on how kids were treated on like Disney and Nickelodeon and in other eras, they're all up on my channel, so you can take a look at those. But the docuseries Quiet on Set features stories from former child stars that worked on Nickelodeon who openly discuss the toxic environment created by the network, specifically Dan Schneider. But then there's Jeanette McCurdy, who was on Nickelodeon as well, who wrote an entire book about it, and she also talked about how it was like to be the child of a crazy stage mom, and this offers a raw and disturbing account of her time at Nickelodeon, shedding light on how she was manipulated and mistreated by those in charge, including her own controlling mother. And Quiet on Set is just one of many instances where former child stars have spoken out about their experiences. Melissa Joan Hart, who you probably know from Sabrina, or Kirsten Storms, and then of course Dylan and Cole Sprouse, the Sprouse twins from The Sweet Life, are among others who've shared their own struggles with balancing their childhood with the pressures of fame. And of course, Demi Lovato. Of course, she made this documentary, Child Star, but she has an entire history of documentaries talking about what it's like to be a child star, especially from the Disney machine. These stories highlight a pattern of exploitation that's often glossed over in the public eye because people are more focused on how privileged these kids are to be living such a life of wealth and fame. In today's digital age, the rise of reality TV and kid influencers has added a whole new layer of complexity to the conversation about child labor and entertainment. While traditional Hollywood has its rules and regulations, the world of reality TV often operates in a legal gray area. Take the infamous example of YouTube family vloggers like 8 Passengers, Daddy05, and the Ace family, who've become notorious for featuring their children in videos, sometimes even pushing them to perform for online attention and, of course, profit. In many cases, if not all, these children didn't have a say in being filmed or monetized. For example, the Daddy05 scandal involved a father filming pranks on his children, leading to emotional abuse that was eventually exposed online. Yet the family profited from these videos, sparking intense debate about where the lines should be drawn. In response to growing concerns, Illinois actually passed a new child influencer labor law in 2023, requiring that a portion of a child's influencer earnings be set aside for the child. Similar to the Coogan law for child actors, but for influencers. This law aims to ensure financial protections for minors who generate revenue online. But will this be enough, and could other countries follow suit in regulating this new wave of digital stardom? We've seen this whole Piper Raquel situation that's been playing out over the last several years and now has that documentary coming out on Netflix. Might even be out by the time that this video is posted, but we've seen Piper Raquel and we've heard all of the reports that her own mother and their team has squandered away her money, but we've also seen all of the kids that were on Dance Moms, because if you're watching my channel, you're probably familiar with Dance Moms. I've made 1,000 videos about it at this point, but those kids and their parents even, they did all of these episodes. They were working overtime and they made next to nothing. They made pennies off of that. All of their money came after because of the fame and how they managed to merchandise themselves or find other opportunities outside of it. But the show itself literally sucked them dry and barely paid anything. Social media has created a massive, largely unregulated space where children are constantly in the spotlight. Influencers' children are often thrust into fame without any legal oversight, and there are very few laws that ensure their well-being or even their right to consent to their online experience. I'm thinking about the Kardashians and how your kids are basically born into the spotlight in that family. They're going to be on a show regardless. They're going to be featured everywhere regardless. They basically don't even have a choice at all. You clearly can't can't consent to being on television when you're 3 days old, let alone a year old or 2 or 3 years old even. But more importantly, at what age should you even have the ability to consent to being on screen? Because we all know that your frontal lobe is not even developed until you're, 25? So to be able to consent to going on screen at like 6, 7, 12, 14 even, you clearly don't understand the actual ramifications yet because you just can't. Your brain hasn't even fully developed. And because there's still such a legal gray area in terms of all kinds of children working in all different kinds of media and entertainment, I feel like we definitely need more kind of regulation and control, especially when it comes to financial transparency and parental control. The effects of child stardom extend far beyond the limelight, too. Many former child stars, even those who achieved great fame, have struggled with their mental health in adulthood. The pressure to perform, the loss of privacy, and the constant scrutiny take a toll on your emotional well-being. Former stars like Drew Barrymore and Britney Spears have openly discussed how their childhoods were overshadowed by the demands of fame, and many others have struggled with addiction, anxiety, and identity issues. And we saw Britney Spears. She was basically worked since she was such a little kid, and then as soon as she turned into an adult, she was thrown into a conservatorship and told that she has dementia so that people could continue thriving off of her and making her work in the entertainment industry so they could get her money. I feel like she's one of the worst case examples where it's basically like she was used as a prisoner of entertainment for her entire adult life and her childhood. But then with Drew Barrymore, I was watching that Child Star documentary by Demi Lovato, and Drew Barrymore was in there at length, and she says that she doesn't blame anyone for her childhood, and Demi Lovato was like, it's kind of hard not to blame anyone. And I feel like Drew Barrymore still doesn't even understand, even though she's been talking about this for years and years and years and years and years. I don't think she truly understands the gravity of the situation she was in as a child, because how can you not blame anyone? Like, you were taken into bars and given substances at like 6 and 7 years old. You can't take responsibility for that as a child. You were 6 and 7 years old. Somebody brought you there, and it definitely wasn't yourself as a child. And for Drew Barrymore, that wasn't even long ago. That was like the 80s and the 90s, and she was clubbing around with adults and doing drugs with literally adults. In addition to mental health concerns, there's the issue of financial mismanagement. Some children earn millions over the course of their careers, yet end up with literally nothing. A child's income is often controlled by their parents, and in many cases, parents have been accused of mismanaging or even stealing their children's earnings. For example, Macaulay Culkin, he was like sucked dry by his parents. He actually revealed in interviews that he had to fight for his earnings after his parents mishandled his finances. So without proper financial oversight, many child stars face the painful reality of having little to show for their hard work once they become adults, or even like having to get emancipated and sue your own family and now be estranged from your family because they were trying to use you as a literal child. And this raises an important argument in the debate over child labor in entertainment. Should children be allowed to work for profit at all? Advocates argue that no child should be subjected to the pressures of working in an industry driven by profit. They believe that children should be protected from the financial and emotional exploitation that often accompanies fame. So the question becomes, how can we ensure that kids are allowed to enjoy their childhoods while also addressing the realities of the entertainment industry that thrives off their image and labor? Today, a new generation of young stars is working without clear protections at all, and the industry has changed, and the law definitely has not kept up. In recent years, though, we have seen like some major pushes to at least change some laws and regulations as it concerns to like reality TV and social media and family vlogging, such as the COPA crackdown on YouTube, which we'll get into that in a minute, but that definitely affected everyone on YouTube. But Sherry Frankie, if you've ever followed the 8 Passengers or been following this whole Mormon mom debacle with Ruby Frankie, that's her oldest daughter, and Ruby Frankie is the mom of Sherry and a bunch of other children, and Ruby is now actually in prison for how she treated these kids. It was very like cult-like.
I definitely hate the things she did, and you know, I feel like I'm also a very lighthearted person in a sense where I would never wish someone to have a bad life, or you know, what I really hope is that from here she becomes a better person and that she works on that and she truly tries to change. I have no contact with her right now, and I don't plan to anytime soon. But then again, she's still blood. She's still my mom, and maybe down the road, eventually I'll have like a conversation with her and maybe eventually have a relationship where we can just talk. But, you know, when it comes to her actually being a mom and then eventually a grandma, I don't think I'll ever have that kind of close relationship again.
Her daughter Sherry has become a vocal advocate for protecting children featured in online content. And in October of 2024, she actually testified before Utah lawmakers highlighting the ethical and financial issues surrounding family vlogging.
I don't come today as the daughter of a felon, nor as a victim of an abnormally abusive mother. I come today as a victim of family vlogging.
Sherry Franke spoke about her family life for the first time since her mother Ruby's arrest. She told lawmakers about the harms she experienced from family vlogging.
As a child, I was fully aware that I was an employee. The business was successful when I was happy or when I shared my hardships with the world.
Her life from 13 to 17 years old was posted online for thousands to watch on her family's 8 Passengers channel.
My friends became scarce because dates were filmed and none of my friends wanted to be on camera.
Franke hopes family vlogging is ultimately banned. She says there's no such thing as an ethical family vlogger. Some of her extended family members continue to post videos of their family's lives online, along with several other content creators in Utah.
I foresee there will be legal crises, with these children realizing that vlogging has brought severe emotional distress, or these kids may realize they don't have an appropriate amount of money to show for their labor.
And so we can see that making this public and putting all of these issues forward is definitely being heard, because Sherry probably never would have been able to testify before Utah lawmakers if she was not a member of this 8 Passengers family blogging channel and wasn't exploited herself. But Sherry emphasized that children often lack the capacity to consent to their online appearances and are vulnerable to exploitation, which I personally agree with, because like I was saying earlier, your brain is not even fully developed. So even if you are consenting to being on screen, are you really understanding the gravity of what you're consenting to? Her advocacy has significantly influenced legislative changes in Utah. And if you're not familiar, I actually learned recently that Utah is the capital of family blogging. And I guess that the Mormon Church actually encourages everybody to spread the word through family vlogging and vlogging. So that's why there's such a huge culture of family vlogging in the Bible Belt, but specifically in Utah, where the Mormon Church is very prevalent. In March 2025, Governor Spencer Cox signed a law aimed at safeguarding child influencers. This legislation grants adults who appeared in online content as minors the right to request the removal of such material, and requires parents earning over $150,000 annually from social media to allocate a portion of these earnings into a trust for their children. Sherry's testimony, along with the support from her father Kevin Franke, was pivotal in the law's enactment. So I think that this is great. This is definitely a huge start. My only issue with this is, why do you have to be making over $150,000, so over 6 figures from social media, before you have to allocate anything for your children? It doesn't matter whether you're making 2 cents off of social media or $2 million, you're still exploiting your kid and making them work the same amount of time and such. It's only going to be like once in a blue moon, 1 in a million, that actually ends up making money from social media at all, especially $150,000 per annum. So I'm like, I don't feel like that part is correct. I also have an issue with Sherry's dad, Kevin Franke, being the one that is supporting this testimony from Sherry. As much as I would love to drink the Kool-Aid of the public image that they've been putting out there of Kevin just being so innocent and him like rekindling this relationship with his daughter, you still choose your wife before any of your children, which to me is completely messed up. And you were there fully involved in all of this family blogging for years. You can't blame everything on your wife just because she's in prison and you're not, and now all of a sudden you're just guilt-free and you're now just removed from all accountability for your own actions. You stood there with all of your tiny little children vlogging and supporting everything that was being done. Whether you were saying no behind the scenes, you never put an absolute to it. You never actually ended it. You just allowed it to happen. So you enabled your children to be in this environment. So do I feel like you're the right person to be standing there backing your daughter and being like, yeah, she's absolutely right. You're the one that put her through this in the first place. Like, sure, her mom is now in prison, but it's like, is this just the lesser of two evils because Kevin wasn't as bad? It didn't land him in prison, so he's just innocent? I don't think so. Sherry's personal experiences, including enduring abuse under her mother's vlogging practices, and her dad's in my opinion, have fueled her commitment to reform. She has publicly criticized the exploitation inherent in monetizing children's lives online, and has called for an end to such practices. These legislative developments in Utah align with similar protections in other states such as Illinois, California, and Minnesota, reflecting a growing national concern about the welfare of child influencers. So I'm glad that something is being done. And then, like I said earlier, that we would get back to it, There's also the YouTube COPA crackdown, which definitely made changes to children's entertainment here on YouTube, but was there actually any positive effects of the COPA crackdown? In January 2020, YouTube made one of the most significant policy changes in its history, completely reshaping the way children's content is handled on the platform. But this wasn't just an internal decision. This shift was actually forced by the Federal Trade Commission and the New York Attorney General after YouTube was caught violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, also known as COPA. So what exactly happened? Well, YouTube was collecting personal data from children under 13 without parental consent, and that's actually illegal under the COPA Act, and they got caught. And as a result, the FTC hit them with a record-breaking $170 million fine and ordered them to change how children's content was handled. This is where everything changed for YouTube creators, specifically the family vloggers. From that point on, YouTube required all creators to label their videos as either made for kids or not made for kids. But here's the kicker. If a creator lied or misclassified their content, YouTube could override their decision and the FTC could fine them directly. And if your content was flagged as made for kids, you were hit with severe restrictions. You would get no personal ads, no comments, no notification bell, no live chat, no community posts, no super chat, no memberships. So this would totally kill your audience engagement, and the no personalized ads means significantly less ad revenue, and no end screens or clickable cards to promote your other videos. So basically it stripped down children's content to its bare bones. So for creators who built their careers around family-friendly entertainment or exploiting their kids, this was a devastating blow. Like, many lost huge chunks of their income overnight. Some pivoted to obviously more general content to avoid restrictions, or others like blurred out their kids' faces, and some actually abandoned YouTube altogether, but most of the ones that were already exploiting their kids just figured out some other way to pivot. The platform also started pushing kids content towards YouTube Kids, which was their separate app designed to be like safer, I guess, somehow. But let's be real, like, most kids still watch regular YouTube, which led to confusion about which videos should actually be considered made for kids. And that's where things got messy, because content that wasn't necessarily for kids but appealed to them, like if it was about gaming or animation, toy reviews, even some like vlogging content, got stuck in this gray area where some creators were wrongly flagged as made for kids. Like if you had anything animated on your channel, for example, it often got flagged as made for kids. And if you watch any animations, you probably know that a lot of animations are not made for kids. Apparently, like 80% plus of animation is actually made for adults, I heard. But yeah, it's like things like Family Guy, The Simpsons, South Park, that's obviously not made for kids. But everybody that got flagged as made for kids, it definitely tanked their revenue and their engagement. So this policy shift didn't just punish YouTube, it definitely punished the creators as well. If you weren't even exploiting kids, but you were just somebody that got put in this made for kids category. And YouTube was the one collecting the kids' data, but instead of facing long-term consequences, they basically just passed the burden onto the people making the content. And that raises the question, was this really about protecting kids, or was it about covering YouTube's ass? So did it actually protect kids? Because if you look around, kids are definitely still everywhere on YouTube and social media. Basically, all of the family vloggers and people that had their kids on the platform still have their kids on the platform. They just had to pivot how they do things, re-strategize, and figure out a different way to monetize off of their children. There's definitely still growing pressure for stronger protections, especially for kids in unscripted content and social media. Do you think there should be stronger laws or even a ban? There are definitely compelling arguments on both sides, but I think with the advancements in technology, especially in AI, that if enough people were to rally behind wanting to have children removed from the labor force in child entertainment, that they definitely could. There are options available. It's not like it's going to shut down the entire entertainment industry. Just like anything else in history, there would have to be a shift. People would be forced to pivot, and they would just be forced to change and adapt. Like, it was not actually until 1938 that Congress even passed a child labor labor law, which really, if you think about it, that's not really that long ago. Before that, kids were literally working in coal mines, cigar factories, and of course there were child entertainers back then as well. There was just absolutely no regulations, zero protections for kids. That was until the Fair Labor Standards Act. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 was one of the key pieces of legislation that established child labor laws in the US, including restrictions on the types of work children could do, the hours they could work, and the minimum age for their employment. The act basically aimed to protect children from exploitation and to ensure they had access to education and a safe environment, and this forced people to change how things were done. Many industries that had previously relied on children for manual labor, like factories and textile mills, began to invest in machinery and automation to maintain productivity with fewer workers, and obviously without their child workers. And this allowed businesses to continue operating efficiently, but without relying on cheap child labor. So as you can see, people are resourceful, and when enough people rally for change, change can happen. And that's what we've seen time and time again in history. And there's always another way to go about doing things. And I think that the future is definitely here in that regard for film and television, especially. Not even just children in film and television, but in all aspects. Like, of course, nobody really liked it, but if they can have the dwarves in Snow White be completely CGI, and people are making YouTube videos now where they've just like completely cloned themselves on video so that they don't even have to record anymore, they can definitely put kids in movies and TV without actually needing kids to play the role. When it comes to TV and film, obviously children are super important because they're super important to storytelling because, well, children exist. We can't just remove them from the equation. It just wouldn't make sense. But with improvements with AI, could we actually abolish children from working in television and entertainment and have them be replaced with CGI and AI? Has AI actually come that far? I know that's definitely a polarizing concept on its own because many children, like millions of children, dream of working in TV, dream of being in movies, dream of being child stars. I know that I was definitely one of them. But if there were enough people that pushed to have child labor completely abolished, the film and television industry would have to go as well. The AI would likely be the solution that they go with because kids are going to always be an important part of storytelling, so they're always going to need to have kids. But if you remove the actual human children from working, then you have to replace them with something in order to have children in these stories. So AI seems like the likely solution. So you could continue to have kids in these stories without having to exploit children and have children working. But that's honestly such a messy and complicated topic. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I've actually worked for Disney Channel and I've been working in the film and television and entertainment industry for like over 15 years. And as a union actor myself, we've actually fought hard to not be replaced on screen with AI. If you remember that giant union strike that ended up putting like most of your probably favorite shows on pause for what seemed like or what ended up being years, that was actually over AI. As technology continues to advance, the idea of using artificial intelligence to replace human actors, particularly child actors, has started to gain traction. While it may sound like science fiction, there are already examples of AI being used to create digital avatars, deep fakes, and even synthetic voices that mimic real people. So could we reach a point where AI could fully replace kids in movies and TV shows?
Hey Mom, hey Dad. It's me, Ella. Well, a digital version of me. Just a bit older. Amazing what technology can do these days, isn't it? All you need are a couple of pictures, like the ones you share on social media, where they can be taken and used by everybody. I know, for you these pictures are just memories. But for others, they are data. And for me, maybe the beginning of a horrible future. A future where my identity can be stolen just like that. Where I can go to prison for things that I would never do. Imagine my credit score being destroyed, Dad. Or my voice copied to scam you, Mom.
Mom, I'm in trouble.
I need you to send me money, please. I don't want to become a meme, humiliated by everyone at school. What you share online is like a digital footprint that will follow me around for the rest of my life. I'm telling you this because I know you love me and would never do anything to harm me. So please, Mom, please, Dad, protect my virtual privacy.
The rise of motion capture technology, deepfake, and digital rendering has made it possible to create hyper-realistic virtual actors. Studios can already generate digital faces and voices that look and sound incredibly lifelike. For an example, in movies like The Irishman, CGI was used to de-age actors, making them appear as if they were decades younger. Similarly, voice synthesis has been used to create synthetic voices with programs that can replicate speech patterns and tonal qualities of real actors. And have you ever seen the live-action Beauty and the Beast?
The same old bread and rolls too slow.
That was years ago at this point, but no one can convince me that that is Emma Watson's real voice. There's no way that is 90% computer generated.
But tonight she's a funny girl that fell.
And with the advancement of these tools, there's definitely potential for a future where AI-driven digital avatars could completely replace children in all of these roles on television. And I think that future is definitely here and coming really, really quick. But these avatars could be programmed to act, express emotions, and interact with human actors, performing scenes just like a real child would. So is it possible? In theory, yes. AI could replace child actors, especially for non-speaking roles or scenes that require repetitive actions. Digital avatars can be programmed to perform scripted actions, smile, cry, or even engage in complex choreographed movements. Basically anything that you would ask a digital animation to do, you can now get that with AI. It's just going to be rendered to look like a real person. And in the case of children, this could alleviate many of the logistical issues that arise with working minors, such as limited working hours, educational requirements, and child labor laws, because AI avatars obviously don't have those constraints, and then we don't have to worry about the children themselves being exploited. However, the most significant barrier, obviously, is creating authenticity and emotional depth when it comes to AI, because it's still not that good at that. Child actors bring a unique, raw energy to their roles because they're actually human that AI at this point still struggles to replicate. While CGI can make a character look human, the nuanced emotional expressions that children display are definitely going to be complex for AI to mimic. But we've seen firsthand just how far AI has come even in the last couple of years that I'm sure that it's going to get even more and more accurate as the years come. But the subtleties of a child's voice or the way they react to emotional scenes definitely would require sophisticated algorithms and machine learning to try and replicate, and I don't think that any kind of AI would truly ever replicate a real child, but it's just something that we have to weigh the pros and cons of should children continue to be working or should they no longer work. And if they're no longer going to be working, are we willing to accept movies where the kids are going to be CGI AI generated? Even the most advanced AI today has yet to perfect that spontaneity and emotional range that human performers naturally bring to the screen, so it would have to be a sacrifice that we're willing to take in order to have children not be working anymore. And while AI might not completely replace child actors in the immediate future, it's likely that we'll see more collaborative efforts between AI and human performers. For example, AI could be used to de-age actors or digitally fill in background characters, while human children would still be cast in prominent roles that require emotional depth and connection to the audience. But AI could also be used to augment performances, helping actors with specific actions or editing without fully replacing them. Or if you need stunts done, you could have CGI do the stunts. I don't know. There's so many different options, obviously, but ultimately AI could evolve to complement the work of children actors rather than completely replace them to make the working environment just more ideal. But for now, the possibility of AI fully replacing children in movies and TV is probably something that's going to be more in the future. There would definitely be a lot of things standing in the way still, but we definitely have a potential solution if children ever were to be banned in entertainment. But could we ever ban children from entertainment? There's definitely compelling arguments for banning children from working in entertainment altogether, focusing primarily on protection, financial security, and the right to a childhood. The entertainment industry has a long history of exploiting its youngest members. Child performers, whether in movies, TV shows, or on social media, are always going to be vulnerable to emotional and physical abuse. The pressure to perform, the control exerted by managers and parents, and the lack of privacy can create a toxic environment for kids that are just still developing. A complete ban would protect children from the abusive dynamics that many former child stars have publicly spoken about, and a ban would ensure that children aren't coerced into working in an industry that often views them as commodities rather than young individuals with rights. Another critical argument is the financial protection for these kids. While some countries have laws like the Coogan Law, which protects a portion of your children's earnings like we were talking about earlier, kids who earn millions can easily be left with nothing by the time they reach adulthood, often due to parental mismanagement or poor financial decisions. And so a ban would remove this because it would just kind of delete the whole equation altogether. Children deserve a chance to experience like a carefree, normal childhood. Working in entertainment, especially at a young age, places immense pressure on these kids to grow up fast, often robbing them of their typical developmental milestones. No child should have to sacrifice their education, their mental health, and social development for fame or money. A ban would ensure that children are allowed to experience their childhoods without the burden of professional expectations being forced on them as young as like a infant. But there's definitely reasons why a ban would be completely unrealistic. The entertainment industry, particularly in Hollywood, like in the United States, has been built on the back of child stars. Like, let's face it, from classics like The Wizard of Oz and E.T. to modern franchises like Harry Potter and Stranger Things, child actors are pivotal to creating the stories audiences love. Similarly, social media platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok have created a space where children gain fame and monetize their presence. In the world of advertising, children are used to sell products to other children or families even, and a ban would drastically alter industries that depend on child talent, leading to potentially massive financial losses. And we all know what companies value most, it's money, and at the end of the day, most government decisions are made about money because the government is a business. So there would have to be a whole myriad of reasons as to why to ban children that were definitely outweighing all of the financial gains in order for a ban to actually come into place, I think. While some children are pushed into entertainment by their parents or guardians, many child performers genuinely enjoy acting, dancing, or even singing, or even creating content online. So forcing a ban would deprive those children of the opportunity to pursue their passion, build careers, and achieve their dreams. And I know that that was definitely me as a kid. I wanted nothing more than to be a child star, but at the end of the day, like I was saying, your brain is not fully developed, so do you even know what you're signing on for? And even if a ban were implemented, it's likely that parents and companies would find loopholes. Just as some parents have been accused of exploiting their children in the past, a ban might simply push child labor into a more underground, unregulated space, which is not going to be any better. Like, that's basically what social media is right now. In countries where regulations aren't as strict, the entertainment industry may move production elsewhere, exploiting weaker child labor laws, which we've seen time and time again, especially with reality TV like Dance Moms. A ban may not necessarily eliminate exploitation, but it could just drive it further underground. So rather than an outright ban, which we're not likely to see, there are several reforms and regulations that could strike a balance between protecting children and allowing them to pursue careers in entertainment, so kind of like a happy medium. As child influencers become more prevalent, many argue that the lack of regulation in this space leaves kids vulnerable to exploitation. While child actors are covered under traditional labor laws, many reality TV stars and social media influencers are definitely not. One possible solution would be to implement stronger labor laws that ensure children working in the digital space are also given the protections they need. Laws similar to those used for child actors, restricting their working hours, ensuring access to education, and requiring financial protections could help to safeguard these children. And obviously, the Coogan Law is a great example of how we can ensure child performers' earnings are protected. Expanding these types of financial safeguards to other countries and industries would ensure that children aren't at risk of losing their wealth due to poor financial management or abuse. This could also create a more uniform standard for the treatment of child actors across the globe. In an ideal world, obviously. One of the key problems with child stardom is the lack of support for mental health and education. A robust system that mandates mental health oversight and ensures that children continue their education while working would be crucial. Children should have access to counseling and support systems that can help them cope with the pressures of their careers. Our educational standards should be maintained, ensuring children get a balanced upbringing and not just a professional life. But it's clear that finding a balance between opportunities and safeguards will continue to be the challenge. So what do you think? Should children be allowed to work in entertainment at all? Should children be allowed to work at all? And if we do have children continue to work in television and film and social media, what needs to change in order to make sure they're protected? Or is there a way to make sure they're protected?